In this video, I will be discussing what I believe to be the best fight in the entirety of Bleach, and also giving my reasons why I have this opinion. Please remember that this is not an objective fact, but rather just my personal opinion. I can't deny the fact that there are a lot of iconic fights in Bleach, such as Grimjaw vs Ichigo, Ukiura vs Ichigo, Yamamoto vs Yuha, and Aizen vs Ichigo. These fights are constantly praised by Bleach fans because of how intense and memorable they are. However, while I also love these fights, I can't help but feel like they overshadow Ichigo versus Byakuya. The progression towards this battle was insane. Everyone, including myself, was itching to see this fight because Ichigo would finally be revealing his Bankai. No other battle holds the same importance as this fight. Endless training to achieve strength so that you could save someone who meant everything to you. Until you realize that Ichigo wasn't fighting to save Rukia just because they were friends, you will never really appreciate this fight. Ichigo has a deeper connection with Rukia. They aren't just friends. And before you get any funny ideas, no, I don't mean the Ichiruki kind of relationship, but rather a brother and sister type relationship. Rukia changed Ichigo's life for the better. Before coming into contact with her, he was powerless. His name literally means to protect, so it was only natural for him to want power. And when the time came for him to protect his mother, he was helpless. For years, he blamed himself for not being able to protect her, and to make matters even worse, she wasn't the only one that he couldn't save. He had the ability to see and sense ghosts, but that was useless because when the ghosts were in danger, there was absolutely nothing that he could do to help them. He was in desperate need of strength, and unfortunately, yet again, he was faced with the same situation. His family was in danger and he was still powerless. He was about to lose all of them, but that was until Rukia appeared and gave him the power to not only protect himself, but his family as well. Ichigo's wish finally comes true, but the person who he was forever grateful to was in danger. Byakuya and Renji were sent on a mission to retrieve Rukia so that she could be sentenced to death, because she broke a sacred law of the Soul Society by giving Ichigo her Soul Reaper powers. Ichigo was obviously not going to let that happen. He manages to defeat Renji, and Byakuya was the only obstacle standing in his way. However, Ichigo doesn't even get a second to react. Byakuya destroys his Zanpakuto and also destroys his Soul Reaper powers as well. Byakuya left him on the verge of death. Ichigo was finally given power, which enabled him to protect his family and friends. But even after obtaining this power, he was still weak. He couldn't protect Rukia the same way he couldn't protect his mother. Ichigo was absolutely devastated. Not only did he lose the person who changed his life, but he also loses his powers. He lost all reasoning and was even ready to commit suicide just to save Rukia's life. Luckily, Kisuke is able to snap him out of it, and he offers him an opportunity to train him so that he could get his Soul Reaper powers back. Ichigo agrees and goes through the hardest training of his life. His chain of fate was severed, and once the chains fully disappeared, Ichigo would become a hollow. Risking his life was totally worth it because the only way he could reason with Byakuya was by proving his strength. Byakuya was so devoted to the laws of the Soul Society that he didn't even bother to defend Rukia when she was sentenced to death. As a matter of fact, he even threatened to kill Rukia with his own 2 hands. Even other captains started to question his decision to not defend Rukia. This was absolutely disgusting to someone like Ichigo because he had 2 sisters that meant the world to him. Therefore, he knew just how important family was. Before the actual fight even begins, Ichigo and Byakuya have a second encounter. However, the battle is stopped by Yoruichi. She takes it upon herself to set up the fight and declares that the battle will commence in 3 days. And she also states that during that time, she will make Ichigo stronger than Byakuya. She reveals that with a technique called Bankai, he would be 10 times stronger than he was in his current state. However, there was a major issue. It takes 10 years to attain Bankai, and Ichigo obviously didn't have that much time on his hands. Luckily for him, there was a shortcut. He was able to learn it in just 2 days. The fact that Renji, an assistant captain who had more battle experience than Ichigo, lost against Byakuya even though he used his Bankai makes you start to question, how could a 15-year-old boy have any hopes of defeating him? Anyways, the promised day finally arrives, and the build-up for Ichigo's Bankai was beyond hype. Ichigo utters out the word Bankai, and it creates a powerful shockwave. The dust settles, and we see Ichigo strike the coolest pose in anime history. I mean, just look at that. The confidence in his stance was very evident. The best scene in this fight was when Ichigo puts Tessazangetsu to Byakuya's neck. It's crazy to think that he could have ended the battle before it's even begun. The prideful Byakuya couldn't even deny this fact. He was in utter disbelief. This outsider not only disrespected the laws of the Soul Society, but he also attained Bankai. He could not believe it so much so that he was in denial. I think it's safe to say that he wasn't too happy about this. He even started to claim that Ichigo's Bankai was a fake. He was underestimating it because of its size, but as we all know, he soon came to regret that decision. Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho technique perfectly describes this battle. To pierce the heavens, sticking your middle finger to anybody who doubts you and proving them wrong. Even with his body bruised and battered, Ichigo still didn't back down. The stakes were too high for him to just give up. Countless of people were dependent on him. Even Renji, a former enemy of his, also entrusted his hopes onto him. Byakuya felt so threatened by Ichigo that he even resorts to using his trump card, Senkei. He abandons all of his defenses and dedicates an entire attack to solely killing Ichigo. Ichigo reaches his limit and his body starts to break down. He couldn't even lift a finger. Byakuya was one strike away from killing him, but luckily for Ichigo, White makes an appearance and saves his behind. This fight meant everything to Ichigo, because even though he could have easily won with the help of White's power, he didn't rely on it. What would have been the point of all of his relentless training and sleepless nights if he was just going to use a cheat code to win? He didn't want his victory to feel cheap, so he gets rid of White and instead fights with his own power. Ichigo's growth during this battle is very noticeable. He went from being scared of a sword cut to putting his body on the line. Byakuya stabbed his foot and also put a hole through his shoulder. He was leaking bags of blood. It was truly brutal to watch, and despite all of this, he just brushes it off. And this is very admirable because there is a big difference in terms of the motivations for each character. Byakuya was fighting for the laws of the Soul Society, and Ichigo was not only fighting to crush those laws, but he was also fighting for what he believed was right. At the end of the day, when it was all said and done, Ichigo came out of it as the victor, and with the battle won, he couldn't help but scream at the top of his lungs. The conclusion of this battle was so satisfying. All of Ichigo's hard work paid off, and his friends also show up to congratulate him. As a reader, you couldn't help but feel proud of him. Ichigo was told by Byakuya that he wouldn't even be able to lay a finger on him, but through sheer determination, he was able to do that and a lot more. There is so much to take from this battle. No matter how hard or impossible your dream might be, get rid of all the self-doubts, ignore what anybody else has to say, and as long as you give it your all, maybe, just maybe, you might be able to achieve your dream. The funny thing is that Ichigo never really thought of Byakuya as his enemy. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even fighting him, but rather the laws of the Soul Society. Byakuya was someone who was brainwashed as a child into believing that the laws of the Soul Society were always right, and Ichigo was able to open his eyes. He goes from wanting to kill his sister to protecting her with his own life. It doesn't really matter if you watch or read this fight, because either way, you won't be disappointed. the manga paneling and art was out of this world, and Studio Period also did a successful job of bringing Tite Kubo's work to life. The animation was top tier, and Byakuya Senbon Sakura was beautifully captivated. Overall, this is not just the best fight in the Soul Society arc, but rather the entire story of Bleach. Sure, there are much more flashy and explosive fights than this, but this fight just has something that the other fights are missing. And this isn't even an exaggeration. The stakes for this battle were too high. Just to save Rukia's life, Ichigo learned the Getsuga Tenshu, mastered Shumpu, attained Bankai, and even formed a bond with his Zanpakuto. Now let's flip the script. Imagine if Ichigo lost. Rukia would have died. The Soul Society would have never developed from their corrupt system. Kaname and Gin would also have never been caught as traitors, and they would continue to help Aizen behind the shadows. There would be utter chaos. Thank you for making it to the end, and if you enjoyed the video, then please like and subscribe, because it really helps the channel out. And also let me know down in the comment section if you guys agree with my opinion, and if not, tell me what your favorite fight is. Peace out.